On today's Locked On Texans podcast, a one-on-one conversation with D lineman Roy Lopez to discuss building on his first two seasons and has the national media been unfair to rookie quarterback CJ Stroud.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to take this time to thank all of our returning listeners, all of our Himalaya players that's coming back for another day. Shout out to you guys. And I also want to take this time to shout out my man Carlton Patton, one of our everyday listeners. Happy birthday to you, brother. Enjoy it. If you are new to the Locked On Texans podcast, just do us a small favor, really small favor. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, including YouTube as well. Make sure you go ahead in those comment section and let us know how you feel for real. As always, I am your Texan football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman, and I'm joined by none other than your Houston Texan credential media member and Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Cody, can you do me a favor, listeners and viewers?
What's up?
I want to start today's show with the same energy the Houston Texans had at practice on Monday. The offense and the defense had another scuffle today, and I love it. I love the energy surrounding this franchise right now, getting physical, getting after it, and not afraid to compete and get in one another's face. Jalen Petrie had an opportunity to speak after practice, and he said today was a good day. He loved the energy, loved the good back and forth and the chippiness of practice. And right now, guys, the entire team as a whole is looking forward to those joint practices with the Miami Dolphins. Before we hop into this Roy Lopez conversation, I can't wait to allow you guys to hear it. Hassan Ridgeway did not practice on Monday, but he is expected back in the next couple of days. Will Anderson had an off day. John Mechie also did not practice. Kenyon Green left practice momentarily. However, he did return. Brevin Jordan did not practice, but rookie tight end Jordan Murray returned back to practice for the Houston Texans on Monday.
And the reason why there was another fight for the second consecutive day is because the offense had an opportunity to match the intensity of the defense. Remember, John, on yesterday's show, I talked about how the defense just came out with a lot of intensity and the offense was a step behind. However, that was not the case during Monday's practice. And look, I understand ever since the start of training camp, we've been starting off the show in the first segment, looking at the positives and the negatives of every single day. However, we're going to do something a little bit different because following day 14 of training camp, I had an opportunity to catch up with Roy Lopez fresh off the practice field to pick his brain about playing under Coach DeMeco Ryans and what it's like entering year 3.
All right, Roy. So, this is day 14 of training camp. Last 2 days been very competitive, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So can you just start by just talking about what's the intensity been like on defense?
I think the biggest thing is just, we understand how good we can be as a team, and so pushing each other on the defense, striving for the offense to get the best they can. In order for that to happen, we're going to have to bring the best out of each other. So I think that's the biggest thing is just seeing how far we can take this thing. We know we're going to be good, but how good can we be?
You talk about, you guys know you're going to be good. What's it been like this year, knowing that you guys are actually on the verge of something special? Because the last 2 years that you've been here, it's been somewhat trying to put together the foundation of a rebuild.
I think it's just the mindset we have going in every day. Being here, for the past 2 years, you understand. And honestly, bringing in vets that have a work ethic and that have been places. You have DeMeco as a coach, and he that's all he knows, man. Is the top of the league. So we're learning from the top to the bottom, and he's setting a standard. So we're just trying to follow it and see where it takes us.
You just finished talking about Coach DeMeco Ryans. What has been some of your biggest improvements that you've seen so far?
I think the biggest thing is just his every day. He's the same dude every day. He wants us to be as great as we can be individually, so that we can be a great team and whole. And he brings energy. I think everybody says that. there's not a day that goes by where, you know, he's out here quiet or not saying nothing. You know, you're going to get the best out of DeMeco every day. So, you know, as a player, you want to give him the best every day.
Everybody know about Coach DeMeco Ryans, but what has it been like working alongside Jock Shazier for the second consecutive year, along with the new defensive coordinator, Mac Burke, as well?
I think the biggest thing is just the fact that, you know, pretty much everybody here is Coach D-line, you know, and everybody's been able to craft with each other and you know, working 2 years in a row with Jock. The biggest thing is we're able to build off of what, you know, we know already. And, he knows the type of player I am, type of moves I like to do, and you know, we're just crafting every day based off of past knowledge and stuff like that, you know. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just growing as a player, not having to restart and just keep growing our craft and every day.
You know, like I mentioned, this is the second year in a row you get an opportunity to, you know, work alongside Jock Shazier. Can you just talk about what it's like just to have some consistency? Because, you know, 2 years you've been here, there's always been like some type of turnover throughout the offseason, but just to have that consistency.
Yeah, and if you talk to Jock, you understand what type of guy he is. You know, he's gonna bring that every day too. He's gonna tell you the truth, and you know, you're gonna understand what's being asked of you and what the job is to be done. You know, so I think that's the biggest thing is, you know, he wants you to be as good as much as you want to be good. You know? So he's gonna try and get the best out of you and help you reach a level that, you know, you want to go. So I think the biggest thing is that we're able to grow, you know, and he understands the player I am. I understand the coaching is, and we're coming to work with you know, the knowledge of each other. So.
Yeah. Can you just walk me through your off season? What's it been like? Because a lot of your teammates and even some of the coaching staff that we talked to and we asked them about you and the improvements that you made going into year 3, they always talk about your work ethic, and they also talk about how you came into camp in better shape.
I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, since you're young, you know, the only thing you can control is your attitude and effort. You know, I think that's like what it goes back to, you know, and, you know, I just try to control what I can control, it's your effort, you know, and so the biggest thing in the offseason is just, you know, nutrition, taking care of your body, staying ahead of things, and you know, just understand that this is a long season, so be able to create habits every day and be able to build off of those. And, you know, when it comes to the season, comes to camp, you know, you built this foundation that you're able to grow on. So understanding, you know, going on to year 3, I understand what I want to do, understand what work I want to get done, and the off season is probably the biggest thing for me, just being able to change my body, mentally reset, and you know, spend time with family and everything like that. So.
Ever since Coach DeMeco Ryans got hired, he always talked about having a swarm defense. What does that mean for you?
Just 11 hands to the ball, you know, relentless, attacking the ball out on the line of scrimmage and change the line of scrimmage and get to it, attack the ball, turnovers, play with energy, play with excitement, and lean on one another to the best we can.
Last question before I let you go. What are some of the goals that you set for yourself this year?
Just to be, you know, play my role and be as good as I can be the best. You know, I think that's something that I live by. It's a motto my family lives by, is BTB, be the best. You know, so it's not necessarily, it's just be the best you, be as good as a player as I can be.
Yeah.
You know, I have personal goals in my head, numbers and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, I just want to grow as a player and keep going. And you know, it's a long season. And, stay healthy and see where God takes us. So.
It's one of those goals, having a little bit more salsa dances inside the NRG Stadium.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Once again, guys, that was Roy Lopez, man. And, you know, as we've been talking about a lot ever since the start of training camp, man, this defense is definitely going to be something special in 2023. Day 14 was another day where the defense came to play. And as a matter of fact, they had an opportunity to record another takeaway. They are up to 13 in training camp as of right now due to the interception Steven Nelson recorded, which was thrown by CJ Stroud. Even though he threw an interception, it was one of the better days for CJ. We'll get into that in the next segment. But overall, man, the defense on all 3 levels has looked good. Shout out to Roy Lopez, because you're talking about one of the biggest surprises of camp. And not only that, he has been one of the most consistent playmakers for the Houston Texans.
Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with the draft prep underway for for the upcoming season. Let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Looking for a safe quarterback to take as a starter late after you wait on the position? Well, listen, then you can go ahead and ride with Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins, one of the most consistent, healthiest, and most reliable passing producers. Cousins has great weapons in year 2 of a pass-happy offense under Kevin O'Connell, from Justin Jefferson to rookie Jordan Addison. He'll once again drive a team that is well put together and is loaded at other positions. All Kirk Cousins got to do is make sure that he gets the ball to them. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can now make sure that your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, tail lights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure that it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the very first time. So check it out. For the parts and accessories your car needs, just go to eBay, look for the green check, get the right parts with the right fit and the right price at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. So, after the Texans' very first preseason game, there has been some criticism of C.J. Stroud's performance.
This is stupid, by the way.
You had Eric Mangini on All 33, I believe, just kind of talking about how if this was a boxing match, basically, after round 1, Davis Mills is the clear better quarterback at this point. And then he goes on to say that for Houston, what makes more sense if you put C.J. Stroud out there to start the year and then pull him, will that damage him more in the long run? Or if you allow Davis Mills to start off the year and then bring CJ in slowly but surely at some point throughout their process. Now that I love that part of that conversation, because that does make a whole hell of a lot of sense. But what I think is unfair, coming from former Browns and New York Jets head coach, coming from a guy that was on the New England Patriots coaching staff for about 6 seasons, Eric Mangini, and other media members that are critiquing C.J. Stroud's game. I've never seen this amount of criticism for a quarterback that only had 4 attempts. And so, and Cody, we'll talk about some of the improvements C.J. made at training camp practice on Monday. But if you look at those 4 attempts, 1 was an interception, a very good read. The ball didn't come out as fast as it should have. And you know what? You can live with that because it's the preseason and you're seeing a quarterback actively trying to take a shot downfield. Something that he wasn't here last year, but in his absence, Houston did not do that last year between Davis Mills, Kyle Allen, and Jeff Driscoll. Houston was a team that did not take those shots downfield. So I love seeing that. I said it before, I'll say it again. You can even kind of critique that first pass to Nico Collins because that ball should have came out quicker than what it did. However, that was a completion. What you loved about C.J. Stroud was using his legs. But what I'm getting at is after 2 series, 4 pass attempts, I think it's completely unfair to judge this young man on a sample of a sample size. Now, when you look at his counterparts, the other quarterbacks that went top in the draft, look at Bryce Young. He had an opportunity to have a couple of more drives than what C.J. Stroud had on Thursday and more passing attempts. Same with Anthony Richardson. Same with Will Levis, who throughout the game was rotating in and out with Malik Willis, the second-year quarterback, who I think had a very good outing for the Tennessee Titans. But overall, judging that sample of a sample size and saying, well, Davis Mills he's a better quarterback at this point, and maybe the Houston Texans, for some of those guys that believe that they made a mistake, understand this, ladies and gentlemen, and listeners and viewers. We have been bringing you what we've seen, right? And so, again, I think Davis Mills had 19 attempts, 14 attempts. I think it was 9 or 14 or 9 or 15 or something like that. He had a sample size. And to go back on Davis Mills' history, we've seen enough of him to know that at some point the cookie crumbles. It's very unfair to judge this young man off 4 passing attempts. I think it's a lazy narrative. I think this is something that Houston has to get used to, because as much as this is a big city and this franchise, I think, is like top 6 in sales, the market for Houston isn't pretty. And Houston has always been a team to kind of be slated and disrespected a little bit. That just comes with the territory. And so now when you have a quarterback that went second in the draft, now more national media are going to pinpoint and look at these games now, and they're going to overreact, or they're not going to give you the 100% truth. By the way, if you guys remember, we talk about national media for Houston the past 2 seasons. If not in the regular season, in the offseason during the draft process, Houston has garnered a lot of buzz. If you guys remember, the national media was selling a lot of you guys on Ike Ekwonu. Remember that?
I remember that.
Remember the national media did that? And with the number 3 overall pick, the Houston Texans selected Derek Stingley. By the way, Ike Ekwonu, I'm glad Houston didn't go that route. But don't buy it. Again, I think some of it is biased. I like Eric Mangini's second point to say that if Houston goes the strategy route of putting putting Davis out there first and allowing him to kind of work his way up into taking over, I like that point. And he's coming from an old school way of thinking, and that at times has helped quarterbacks, right? But to say that he's won round 1 when CJ wasn't really in the fight to really give himself an opportunity with 4 passing attempts and 2 drives, that's unfair to the young man. We'll get more from CJ Stroud in preseason game 2. By the way, he is still listed as this team's starting quarterback.
Yeah, and following day 14 of training camp, he did take all of the first team reps. So before I go into looking at his improvements and everything else in between, John, I do want to say that, me, ever since we drafted CJ, I have been on board with the Houston Texans if they went their route of starting Davis Mills and giving CJ Stroud an opportunity to learn from afar, because every time I bring up that situation, I always go back to Davis Mills himself. The 2 times that he put together a string of games where he looked decent and looked promising at times came after he was pulled as the starting quarterback and had an opportunity to learn the game from afar. We have talked about that a lot of times on this show, and that's why I think it will be beneficial for CJ if they go that route. However, CJ Stroud, I noticed he was getting rid of the ball a lot quicker, and he wasn't really taking shots downfield like he was those first couple of weeks of practice, because whether it's in the preseason or whether it was on yesterday with Laramie Tunsil being out, that marked, I believe, the 3rd out of the last 5 days where CJ Stroud took the field, rather in the preseason or in training camp, where 3 out of his 5 projected starters was not on the field. Laramie Tunsil, Scott Quisenberry, and Titus Howard. So that's definitely going to play a factor into CJ Stroud holding on to the ball a lot longer. And like I mentioned on yesterday, I did not see that. He was getting the ball out a lot quicker, taking those intermediate passing attempts, checking down, and that made the offense a lot more efficient. Plus, looking at day 14 of training camp, another note that I took, it seems like he's getting more comfortable going into his reads. So, yes, the Houston Texans should take their time with CJ Stroud. I'm all about that. But I also believe it's unfair how you judge a guy who has only played 2 drives in the preseason. And if we keep it in 100, even though when you look at the interception that he threw, there was moments where it was hard, at least for me, to evaluate him in that game because the offensive line did not look good. Yeah. What was that stat you said for Friday's show?
He was pressured on 60%
60%, and Austin Deculus gave up 3 pressure and a sack. And I believe you went back and saw where George Fant gave up a sack too, but that wasn't on Stroud. That was on Davis Mills.
It was on Mills, yeah.
So that's why, it's hard for me to look at that preseason game and say, oh, CJ Stroud is this, CJ Stroud is that, because, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at how there has been moments where he struggled in these training camp practices, I'm telling you, he learns from his mistakes and he do not make them. Now, I understand he threw an interception on yesterday, but that is not an indictment against him. That is just showing you how good this defense is going to be, especially with Steven Nelson, who has not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 interceptions alone in training camp.
He's been on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
But in fairness to CJ, between Noah Brown and Nico Collins, he connected with them on some touchdowns as well.
And that's what I was going to get at. And with those touchdowns, it wasn't just him, like I said, attacking downfield like we've seen on several occasions, especially between him and Nico Collins. It was him literally taking those short, immediate pass attempts, making sure that this offense stays efficient and marching down the field, something that the Houston Texans haven't had consistently over the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, and I understand that when you look at CJ Stroud and Bobby Slug, those guys are still working on things, but throughout the entire process, since the arrival of DeMeco Ryans and since the arrival of Bobby Slug, they want to limit those turnovers, and so I think he's going to be all right, man. Anthony Richardson threw a pick. Will Levis, I think, had a turnover or something like that. And so we got to give these guys grace. And I think that judging them off 4 attempts or a quarter of preseason is just completely unfair.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this Tuesday installment of Locked On Texans. And to understand how popular the Houston Texans have got over the last, 8 months, the guys from the Pivot Podcast, my favorite podcast, by the way. As a matter of fact, I literally just binge watched the Pivot Podcast a couple weeks ago. My wife was away. I think she was somewhere with her sister, and I literally watched like 3 or 4 episodes. But the guys from the Pivot Podcast was there. Cool guys, man, especially Ryan Clark. I was standing right next to Ryan Clark when he saw Derek Stingley. He didn't say Derek, he didn't say Stingley, he didn't say Mr. Stingley. He said, hey, 2-4. And then both of them came around, dapped each other up, had a quick conversation. Right exactly. Had a quick conversation. It was the same thing with Jalen Petrie, by the way. Speaking of CJ Stroud, CJ Stroud spoke to him as well. Same thing with Coach DeMeco Ryans, man. By the way, speaking of the Pivot Podcast, Pro Football Hall of Fame, please get Fred Taylor in. Matter of fact, class of 2024 should be Andre Johnson and Fred Taylor. That's it. That's it. That's the class.
Let's pivot over to the rookie quarterbacks preseason game in week 1 of preseason. We've talked about CJ Stroud. I'll tell you guys, man, I was impressed with how Bryce Young stood in that pocket and was delivering passes. For his height and weight was always a concern, but he looked comfortable and he looked like he's going to be able to do the things that he did at Alabama in the NFL's preseason game week 1. But the 2 that I really watched was Indy. Watch Indy. Then I had an opportunity to watch a little bit of the Titans. Anthony Richardson had that interception early on, but he delivered a beauty, and that arm strength is going to be something that's going to break him out of hard times, along with being able to run over defenders. Alec Pierce should have caught that touchdown, should have came down with that for a score, but Anthony Richardson looks miles ahead of what I thought he was going to be looking at this point of his career, and I can see a situation. Eric Mangini is talking about rolling out Davis Mills, right? And we're disputing that in a sense, but I can see a situation where Indy may roll out Anthony Richardson to be their starting quarterback week 1. So I liked what I saw out of him, just him being able to do the things on the football field that he's comfortable with and his intangibles. Will Levis, I thought, to be fair to Will, I thought that he did a couple of things decent. But overall, I think Will Levis looked like Will Levis. And I think what I got from Will Levis as of right now is just he has an uphill battle to be QB1 on this team, going up against Malik Willis, who I thought looked better. Will Levis was 9 of 14 against the Bears, 85 yards and 1 interception. Longest pass on the day was 21 yards. Right now, man, I think Will Levis is definitely QB3. If he's not, then I believe that that's a situation that the Tennessee Titans may force, because Malik Willis looked like he's comfortable doing the things that Malik Willis was comfortable doing out of college. That one interception I thought was a mixture of the ball being too high, but the receiver did allow that ball to hit his hand. So you want to see that guy bring it down, the tight end, I forgot his name. But being able to use his legs, something that you pair that with Derrick Henry, could be scary. I'm talking about this in depth a little bit because between the Titans, between the Colts, and even between the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence threw a touchdown, also threw an interception. Those are going to be the guys that we really got to compete with here in this division. And I think this division is going to be pretty good with some quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence is already here. I've talked about my faith in C.J. Stroud being a good quarterback, but Anthony Richardson looked pretty good to me. Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Make sure that you follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. And also, YouTube, run those numbers up. And again, happy birthday to my man, Carlton Patton. Enjoy your day.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.